We're with Adam Feldman. Adam is a criminal defense attorney in Phoenix, Arizona. There's been a lot of questions related to the the prostitution sting going on in Phoenix, and Adam's agreed to answer some of these questions directly. And here's the first one. My husband was charged for child prostitution when he was only committing prostitution. He said this was part of the sting operation. How did this happen?
Don't even get me started with this operation, because it is it's really a tragedy. Now, obviously, I'm not promoting child prostitution, and I'm not promoting any form of prostitution, but I think the agencies, the law enforcement agencies in Arizona, when it comes to this reverse sting operation, have really dropped the ball, and here's why. What they've done is almost every single case runs a very similar script. The idea is this. The defendant goes online, usually it's a back page ad, and they find somebody who's soliciting themselves as an 18-year-old prostitute. All right, so first thing is that the defendant is trying to engage in prostitution, but definitely not child prostitution. The defendant then sends out an email or a text, whatever it is, and the person responding is actually an undercover officer. So the way that works is the undercover officer says, hey, yeah, are you looking for a good time, whatever it is, and as they're texting back and forth over the course of, sometimes it's minutes, hours, I've even seen it where sometimes it's over the course of days, all of a sudden the undercover officer does the quintessential bait and switch and says, well, if you don't mind picking me up some cigarettes, I lost my fake ID. Well, I guess that's supposed to put the accused on notice that this person is under 18. Sometimes the undercover officer will even go further to say, I'm actually 16, and are you cool with that? Whatever it is, the person who's been arrested ends up going to the hotel, meets the undercover officer, who never looks like she's 16, 17, 18, never even looks like she's in her 20s, but nevertheless she's claiming that she's 16, and in a short amount of time, SWAT team comes in and the person's under arrest. So the reason that your husband or loved one or whoever it is has been charged with child prostitution when they really just set out to do regular prostitution is because whatever arresting agency it was, they did that bait and switch, and the person said she was 16.
Okay. Next question. I believe that the girl was an undercover officer, so she couldn't have been under 18. Can they still charge him with prostitution?
The answer is absolutely, and that's what they've done. We've seen over 100 of these individuals charged with child prostitution when truly their goal was to meet an 18-year-old prostitute. The reason that they can do this is that there is specifically a paragraph in the child prostitution statute that says if the undercover officer is posing as a minor, age 16, 17, or 18, or even younger for that matter, it's not a defense. So in other words, they can charge you or your husband or your brother or anybody with child prostitution even though the undercover officer is not 18 or isn't younger than 18 and is just posing as let's say, a 16-year-old.
Okay, next question we have is, will my husband have to register as a sex offender?
The answer is that if he's convicted of this, it's absolutely possible. The registration is a consequence associated with child prostitution. Now, with that said, I've never had a client who's had to register because of these charges or because of. So technically, the answer is yes, he could have to register, but with the right representation, odds of him registering are slim to none, more likely none.
Okay, and I guess this kind of goes to similar angles that previous question that's specific to you. Have you represented anyone for these cases before?
Yes. And that's an important question to ask an attorney. If you're looking to hire an attorney for these cases, and you should, it's the number one question: have you represented anybody before? What have the results been? How did it end up? How do you feel about these cases? And the answer is yes, I've represented lots of people who were charged with these, and the results have all been very good. and here's why. So while the statute says that it's not a defense that an officer or an undercover officer was posing as a minor, there are a ton of different ways to defend these cases, all of which have been very successful so far. The first way that we defend this case is it's the simplest form. It's basically saying that the state doesn't have enough evidence to prove this. Our theory is that the prostitution never took place until the defendant was inside of the hotel room. Well, once the defendant was inside of the hotel room, it doesn't matter what that undercover officer had already said to him. It doesn't matter that she said, hey, I'm 16 or 17, can you buy me some cigarettes? Because in the world of prostitution, there's a ton of role-playing, and until you really get there and meet the prostitute, you don't know what you're getting into. Well, this is the good part. When every one of these accused defendants went into that hotel room, there was no doubt in any of their minds that this undercover officer was not a minor. And the police reports always reflect that. These undercover officers have been anywhere from 25 to 35 years old, and the way that they look reflected that. It didn't matter that the girl was wearing, bummy clothes or whatever. None of these undercover officers looked like they were under the age of 20, let alone 16 or 17. The other way that we've been defending these cases is the theory of entrapment. A lot of people have heard of entrapment through TV and movies, things like that. And truth is that you hardly ever get to use that theory as a defense attorney. But here, it's a huge defense, and you have to think about why. The first prong on defending somebody with entrapment is, did the officers create the offense? Answer here is absolutely. Child prostitution is not prostitution. While the accused here was trying to commit prostitution, he was not trying to commit child prostitution, which then goes into the next prong, something that we would have to prove, which is, did the law enforcement, did the police officer, undercover officer, encourage or induce the person to do this? Absolutely. Again, he wasn't looking to commit child prostitution. She did the bait and switch and said last minute, oh, you know what, I'm 16 or I'm 17. And then 99% of the times when they get into that hotel room, the undercover officer is pretty pushy in trying to promote this sale, because if he doesn't go through with it, they don't have a charge. So in 99% of these cases, yes, the officer is the one who's pushing and promoting and inducing the person to commit child prostitution, even though this guy is looking at this alleged prostitute and saying, there's no way she's 16 or 17. And the final way that we defend these cases within the entrapment theory is we need to prove that this person was not predisposed to commit child prostitution. Now, most people think, well, if he went through with it, they were texting back if she was 16 or 17 and he still went to the hotel, doesn't that mean he's predisposed? I guess that's your common sense coming out at you, but the truth is that we have psychiatrists that we've been using on the cases, and the answer is absolutely not. The majority of these people ended up committing a crime of opportunity, but in no way were predisposed to actually commit. More than 95% of the people who are arrested have no criminal history, which means they don't have possession of marijuana, random criminal history, but more important to our case, they have no criminal history associated with prostitution, and most importantly, they have no criminal history associated with any child-related crimes. So that predisposition just isn't there. And then on top of that, they were looking for adult, 18 and older prostitutes. So we use our psychiatrists. They get on board to help prove the theory of entrapment. And the final way that we defend these cases is by attacking the sentencing structure. And again, we've been successful on all these different areas.
All right, excellent answer. A lot of information on that. The final one here, and this might be duplicative to a degree, but can you help my husband?
Yes. This is the biggest way that we can help. The state comes out of the gate saying, hey, look, you've just been charged with a sex crime. Basically saying, if you go to trial and if you lose, you are looking at a mandatory 7 to 21 years in prison. And so you better take whatever deal we give you. And that could be registration, that could be sex offender probation, meaning you can't have contact with kids, you can't use the computer, you can't live in certain areas. I mean, there are tons of different restrictions associated with these charges and these convictions. So when it comes to help, can I help? Yes, and I've helped lots of people already. We've been able to avoid registration. We've been able to avoid certain sex offender terms of probation. We've been able to create situations where they can earn misdemeanors instead of having felonies on their record. And the biggest thing is that we've successfully attacked that notion of the sentencing guidelines where they're saying, hey, you're looking at 7 to 21 years in prison. We just believe that's not true. And we've had courts agree with us. So the answer is definitely I can help. It's a big, involved process, but it's definitely worth it because if the state has their way with you and you go to trial, they're going to put you away for 7 to 21 years. And this is all for somebody who wasn't looking to engage in child prostitution. So help is out there, and I can definitely assist.
All right, thanks. Well, if you have any additional questions for Adam, you can actually post them in the comments section below, or you can reach out to him directly. Adam, thanks for your time.
You bet. And what I've found with a lot of the people who've come in is that they are just, they're at their wits' ends. They're terrified. They don't know what to do next. You will see that a single phone call with me or a meeting in the office is going to reduce 90% of your stress. I can help. I've helped out a lot of people with these cases, and I know I can help you. Just give me a call, 602-540-7887.
Thanks, Adam.
You bet.